Thank you. I think I've had this very pleasant task of chairing lectures by two excellent academics on the very pleasant theme of JNU's contribution to the nation. We've heard two very eloquent speeches which have highlighted JNU's origin, purpose, and contributions. I think both speakers. Okay, I have to say it again. I said I had the very pleasant task of chairing these two lectures by two very excellent academics on this very pleasant theme of JNU's contribution to the nation. Now, we've heard two very eloquent speeches which have highlighted JNU's origin, purpose, and contribution, and both speakers, I think, have given us a detailed account of JNU from its inception, from its beginnings, which I think Professor Bhambri in particular, I think, very nicely outlined the point that it was that the very idea of JNU was located in a very critical, rationalist, pluralist, progressive thinking. And I think Professor Oommen pointed out that this is reflected in the JNU's student composition in the JNU faculty. And I think he was very right in pointing out there's perhaps no other university, even though we have more than 20 central universities, and yet there is no other university with this kind of very diverse social background, every which way we look at it, in terms of caste, class, region, every which way that we look at it. JNU's
gender.
Gender, of course. Gender, very much so. Very much so. Thank you for very rightly correcting me. Now, as we've heard about JNU's contribution. Now, the interesting thing what is really paradoxical is that JNU's contribution is internationally recognized. It is nationally recognized. It's very, very widely recognized, except by those who've been attacking JNU for the past 1 year and have thrown this university in turmoil. And I think I quite agree with Professor Bhambri that we will not really be able to understand this attack unless we take it for what it is, which is that this is a very systematic, organized attack by forces who regard JNU as an opposition to their ideas, to their idea of India, to their ideas of politics, to their ideas of history, most importantly, and of course to their very idea of politics and democracy. Now, what they are doing is clearly attempting, but I'm quite convinced that they will fail. They're attempting to really destroy a very, very fine institution. I think there can be no doubt that JNU is one of India's finest institutions. It will probably not be an exaggeration to say that it is perhaps India's only high-quality university. And I say this mindfully, and I say this on the basis of some understanding of higher education in India and some understanding and assessment of universities in India. And of course, one can say this now with some confidence because only just about 2 weeks ago, JNU was recognized and honored as the best university in India. And it has always, in various assessments that have been done of universities in India, it always ranks among the top 5, possibly top 3 universities in India. To my way of thinking, and this was reflected in the two speeches that we've heard, I think attacking JNU is clearly a very politically motivated attack by those who stand for very conservative ideas and conservative politics and see JNU and the ideas that it represents as a threat to their conservatism. And so this whole shutdown JNU movement, I think it's really coming from very anti-intellectual forces which dominate our society today and which certainly, well, I'd like to think that they don't dominate our society, but certainly dominate the regime. Secondly, I think, so one aspect is that I think we must recognize that the attack on JNU is principally an anti-intellectual attack, because you are really attacking India's most intellectual, most deeply intellectual institution, and it can only come from those who really lack intellect, so to speak. Secondly, and equally really paradoxical and perhaps even more shocking, is to call JNU an anti-national institution. Again, I regard this as an insult to nationalism. I consider myself to be a patriot. I certainly consider myself perhaps even to be a nationalist, but not the kind of nationalism that is holding sway today. But so to call JNU, I think, anti-national is clearly an insult to nationalism. It is an insult to patriotism, and it can only come from those whose patriotism is fragile and narrow. Only they can condemn JNU as anti-national. Now, I'll just take a couple of minutes to very quickly, because I think it would be important for us to have a discussion. But I'd like to just make 5 quick points which, in a way, highlight, in my understanding, JNU's contribution. I think both Professor Bhambri as well as Professor Oommen have very rightly pointed out that JNU's contribution is principally academic. Much as everybody else might like to think of JNU as a hotbed of politics, as a hotbed of political activism, as a hotbed of student activism, the fact of the matter is that everywhere else, if you go to other institutions in India and abroad, they look at JNU as JNU's contribution and appreciate and recognize JNU's academic contribution. They're not looking at, they're not really, they're probably not even aware of JNU, that JNU is a hotbed of politics and so on. So I think, and this is evident if we look at JNU, if we look at the research that has been, done in JNU. I think especially, since I'm myself from the School of Social Sciences, certainly the contribution of the JNU School of Social Sciences, both students and faculty, to social science research in India is exceptional. In fact, I remember some years ago when the annual reports were being presented, it was pointed out that if all the 2/3 of all serious published research is done in the School of Social Science. That is to say, social science research has been done in the School of Social Sciences. Now, secondly, I think the point that was made is about, which I find is very important for us to know and highlight, and we can't do enough of that. And that is, I think, that the idea of JNU is really the idea of India. I mean, the two can't be separated. If you break JNU, you are in a way breaking the very, by challenging the idea of JNU, you're actually challenging the very idea of India, because clearly JNU is a living embodiment of the idea of India, and therefore, and when I say the idea of India, I don't mean the idea of India only in terms of pluralism, but obviously the idea of India is, as I said, liberal, progressive, and I think, as Professor Bhambri very rightly pointed out, and Professor Oommen was also hinting at that JNU's research is not what everybody else thinks it is. It is really a very, it's liberal, it's progressive, but it is also, it is significant because JNU is one university where research combines theory and empirical work. That is what really stands out as far as JNU's work is concerned. Now, such research might well be done in some of these ICSSR institutions, but there are very few universities which have so well combined theory and empirical work as has been done in JNU. And I think this is because from its very inception, I think JNU has produced has taken a very critical approach to society, to economy, to politics, to history, and has therefore been able to produce, very cutting-edge critical research about society. Thirdly, I think this was again, of course, highlighted by both Professor Bhambri and Professor Oommen, but especially I think Professor Oommen when he was talking about the admission system. I think what is really again quite exceptional about JNU is, of course, its admission system. I think we don't really need to even spend time highlighting that, because it's so obvious that it is JNU's unique admission system which has contributed to the making of JNU, and I would say to the making of young researchers who have then gone on to join other universities and other colleges and contributed to the reform of syllabus there, to doing again significant research in the institutions that they're now teaching or researching in. And I think the JNU admission system is significant because it actually demonstrates that there is no contradiction between excellence and social justice. That there is really no contradiction between excellence and affirmative action. I think JNU is really a standing example of how excellence and affirmative action can be combined, and how the ends of social justice can be promoted by encouraging, obviously, encouraging students from different social backgrounds. It's in this context that one finds deeply problematic this recent discussion and debate and decisions that have been taken with regard to admission policy and the prospect of cutting down admissions in MPhil, PhD. I mean, I've been following this debate over the past few weeks in the newspapers, and I find it really, I can't make sense of this whole concept of vacancies in MPhil PhD or vacancies in PhD. It doesn't seem to make any sense to talk about vacancies. I mean, we can think of vacancies in we can think of vacancies in public sector jobs. We can think of vacancies in university positions, but to talk of vacancies in research, I mean, the very idea is absurd. And I think we should really say this, that this very idea of vacancies, and that we will decide, I mean, are we going to decide on number of seats as we go along? Or is it really, it's an academic decision which has to be taken by academic bodies, which principally in this case means the center or the department concerned must decide the number of seats. And this is how we've been doing, this is how we've been deciding student intake for the past 40, 50 years. And I think that whole system has held us in very good stead. Now, when I first came across this concept of vacancies, I was wondering whether we were talking of job vacancies or we were talking of MPhil PhD research. Now, to talk of now to have this whole system, I think it's all to my mind, this is tantamount. I mean, any admission cut or any seat cut at this juncture when JNU has just been recognized as the best university in India would be really punishing good research. It's nothing short of that, but not just punishing good research, you're actually going to be hurting the cause of research in India, because clearly we are all agreed that some of the best research is being done in this university by all of you who are doing excellent research, and to now to actually even contemplate the idea of cutting down admissions, I find really very, very problematic and very, very troubling. Fourthly, I would say, and why I find this so troubling, and this is really JNU's fourth major contribution, is that it was until recently, I would say until 2015, JNU was a very good self-governing institution. Now, how many institutions can we describe, I mean, that is universities, can we describe as self-governing? It was a self-governing institution. It was a highly rule-based institution. And a very democratic institution. Why was it so? Because JNU was a pioneer in democratizing its whole working from the very beginning. And JNU was, in a way, a very decentralized university, where basically, I mean, it's a bottom-up institution. Now, of course, we are making it a top-down institution where either the UGC or the powers that be, or the administration is going to take decisions and is going to decide within quote research vacancies. Now, I think so the self-governing rule-based institution was extremely well run, and at the center of it, the point that has already been made, was autonomy. JNU, of course, did have autonomy, but it made very good use of that autonomy. And it's clear, I think, the experience of JNU over the last 45 years shows that autonomy is imperative. It is imperative for academic development, for academic growth. Finally, I think, JNU also shows, and this brings me to the point I was making earlier, that everybody within this country thinks that JNU is a hotbed of politics. But again, that hasn't hurt JNU's academic development. The point is that it is very clear, again, just as I pointed out that excellence and social justice can go together, I think democratic politics, social activism and excellence can also go together. And in fact, one might argue that based on what I have seen of JNU in the 40 years that I had the privilege of serving this institution, it's very clear that social activism and democratic thinking, democratic politics, or a democratic ethos contributes again to good academic work. And this is because I think students are alive and aware of the major challenges that face our society. So I think it is true, of course, that JNU is facing a challenge of survival. But I think, given the way in which JNU has responded to this challenge, given the way in which the students and faculty of JNU have risen to this challenge, and one is really very, very proud of this institution. It's an absolutely, one feels so proud of this institution, of its students, of its young faculty, as also, of course, its senior faculty, that they realized from day one what this was all about, what this attack from February 9, which was supposedly in the name of sedition and so on and so forth. I think they realized that behind this was a much deeper attack against JNU, against the very idea of JNU and what JNU stands for. And I think so saving JNU, and therefore I think everyone, and I would say just about everyone, has joined together, has joined hands in saving JNU, because I think we all realize that saving JNU is saving higher education, which I think we would all also agree is facing a serious crisis. And it's not just, and I'll end with this, it's not just a crisis of education, but I think it's not just that education is facing a crisis. I would say the nation is facing a crisis. Democracy, pluralism, free speech, and above all, the very idea of dissent is under attack. And JNU is famous for its tradition of radical dissent, and I think we will all do very well, as we have done over the last 1 year, to defend this institution, which, as I said, stands for the best values, that this nation stands for the best kind of education that this nation has striven to give its people. Thank you.